Thanks, Jeff. That was a smashing introduction. Hi, all. I'm Steve Devor. I think I know most of you, if not in person, at least by face. You guys are all the coaches this year, correct? Well, for those of you that are new, I'm a professor at Ohio State and also do a lot of work with Ohio Health as an exercise physiologist as well. And I think sort of the overall point of tonight is what we wanted to do is just bring all the coaches together without all of your groupies, if you will, posses, and just sort of give you guys sort of an overview of things that I do, things that Dr. Bright does, things that Sean does, and things that Jeff do, and sort of provide you kind of with expanded bullet points. Because I think the goal is that you guys will be able to take the bullet points. I know it's Sean and Jeff have prepared a sort of a coach's manual for you and sort of be able to kind of talk about these things to your people in your pace group, either on the runs on Saturday or when they send you questions. And I think also I want you to know, at least for me, and I think the others feel the same way as well, if you guys ever get questions that you aren't comfortable answering or you want a little more in-depth thing on, please don't hesitate to forward them to me or to Dr. Bright or to Sean or to Jeff, and we can probably either email that individual directly or email you back and let you send that to them, or maybe email the whole group. So I know I answer questions for people a lot, and Jeff posts some of those, and I'm happy to keep doing that. So our goal, I think, is to get as much accurate information out there as possible and equip you guys to the greatest extent possible to be able to answer questions from the group. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is a number of things, not any of them in great depth, but kind of some nutrition, hydration, and we're going to talk a little bit about heart rate zone training and things like that, and finally tempo runs and hill workouts. So where we're going to go tonight is, first I want to talk about nutrition for performance, then we'll spend a little time talking about hydration and again, things you should know about that. Then a little bit about VO2 Max tests and maximum heart rate and training zones and things like that, where your athlete should be training at. Then I'd like to talk a little bit about heart rate guided training and at least introduce those concepts and at least get people to start thinking about why it's important to do that. And then lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about tempo runs and hill workouts and sort of when to do those, how to do those, and how best to incorporate them into people's schedules. And I want to say right at the beginning, if you're working with people that are first-time half marathoners or first-time full marathoners, well, first-time halves or first-time full, maybe if they've done a halves before and now they're stepping up to a full, it'd be different. But tempo runs and hill workouts probably shouldn't be done a lot by people who are beginners. I mean, I think for those folks, it's a matter of getting them. I always have two goals for first-time people. One, finishing, and two, and maybe most importantly, is not hating it. So, because my goal is not to have them do it once, but to have them really enjoy it and come back and want to do it again and again. So, to me, the not hating it part is almost as important as the finishing part. So, I think for folks like that, doing tempo runs and hill workouts and the Wednesday night workouts are probably not well advised initially. So, first, let's talk a little bit about nutrition for performance. I think as many of you guys know, and maybe you had this experience as well, a lot of people begin running or endurance activities to lose weight. And the increased running typically results in healthier eating habits because people start to understand that, wow, you know, what I'm putting into my body influences how I perform on Saturday, how I perform on Wednesday, how I perform in these workouts. So they start to pay a little more attention to things like that. They become a little more in tune with your body and realize, again, the effects of food on performance. And this is one of the things that I mean when I say start to listen to your body. You know, you realize if you have the 100 pepperoni donatos on Friday, Saturday morning's run might not go as well as you'd like. So there really is a direct connection between food and performance. And you guys, runners need carbohydrate. This is something I harp on all the time. You'll hear me talk about this all the time. Runners really need carbohydrate in their diet. High protein diets equal compromised performance. It's that simple, because if you're eating way too much protein and fat in your diet, there's not enough room for carbohydrate, and then your performance is going to suffer. It's really just that simple. So 60 to 65% of your daily calories should come from carbohydrate. And the best sources of those are 100% whole grains, vegetables, fresh fruits, beans, things like that. 100% whole grains is important. Again, there's a difference between a slice of bread from Great Harvest and Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread is not food, okay? We don't eat Wonder Bread anymore. We've let that go now. We don't eat Wonder Bread anymore because we're all over the age of 5. So no more Wonder Bread. It's great, 100% whole grain, great harvest bread. That's what we want to be eating. And again, as many, vegetables and fruits and beans and things like that in your diet as possible. Good sources of fiber, carbohydrate, and that's what runners need. So we know that, and why do runners need carbohydrate? Because we know that 1 hour of intense aerobic exercise depletes your glycogen storage by about 55%. Now everyone, glycogen is the storage form of carbohydrate. When you eat carbohydrate, it gets converted to glycogen and it's stored in your skeletal muscles and in your liver. And then when you're doing your activities, it's drawn on from your skeletal muscle bed in your liver, and that's what fuels your performance. And we know about an hour of intense activity drops it by about 55%. 2 hours, which is not uncommon for your Saturday runs. I know that might not be intense activity on your Saturday run, but you're out there for a couple of hours. That's not uncommon, particularly as mileage starts to build. That completely depletes your glycogen storage. When glycogen is completely gone, total carbohydrate depletion, that's what we call bonking or hitting the wall. That's what happens around 18, 20, 21 miles in a marathon because, again, you only have about 2.5 hours of storage. And if your carbohydrate storage is completely gone, what your body does is switches over to uses primarily fat as a fuel source. It's not that fat as a fuel source is bad, but fat as a fuel source only gives you the energy that you use. It's called ATP. That's what your muscles use for contraction. Fat only gives you that ATP about half as fast as carbohydrate. So the way to think about it is instead of getting your fuel through a hose like this, all of a sudden you're getting your fuel through a hose like that. So you can't get the fuel as fast, so you don't move as fast. And that's called hitting the wall or bonking. Yes, you can keep running, but all of a sudden it feels like you're trying to run through molasses in January. It just feels very laborious, very hard, and you slow way down, and that's why. So we know that carbohydrate is also the only fuel your brain and motor nerves can use. And what connects to skeletal muscles are motor nerves. And if your brain and motor nerves don't have carbohydrate, they don't function all that well. And that's why sometimes if you've ever seen, just one little quick story, if you've ever seen like an Ironman event on TV, an Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, then you get to ride your bike 112 miles, then we're going to run a marathon at the end. Why not, right? So we're going to throw them all back to back to back. So sometimes if you see one of these on TV, you'll see some of the people maybe that aren't at the beginning finishing. As they're coming to the end of the marathon, they're like coming up toward the finish line and they're sort of what I call all wiggly. Now the reason that's happening is because they're losing motor control of their skeletal muscles. Their nerves are not working properly anymore because they're completely out of carbohydrate. That's why now that's an extreme example, but that's what literally happens. And that's why endurance athletes need to have a diet that's rich in carbohydrate. So just make sure, again, you got the bullet points from me, 60-65% carbohydrate in your diet. That's what they need. So post-workout recovery meals. This is something I know that's been talked about a lot lately. We've been talking about chocolate milk. I know I posted something on that, and I know that we work with Snowville Creamery. They provide an excellent product. After you're done working out, you're done with your workout or you're done with your race, this is now when you need to get some protein in the meal as well. And you want to do this, everyone. You want to tell folks, ideally within 30 minutes of being done with exercise. Ideally within 30 minutes, for certain within 60 minutes. If you miss that window of 60 minutes, you're doing yourself a big disservice. Within that first hour, that's when blood flow is increased to the muscles, that's when insulin sensitivity is very high, and that's when the food that you put in will be sort of, if you will, just sucked right up into your muscles and start to replenish that glycogen storage. So oftentimes you have to plan and have something with you. Either on Saturday runs, something is often provided, the chocolate milk or something, but if it's a Tuesday run, you're just, and you're meeting some people and you're a ways from home and you're meeting them to run, you've got to plan and bring stuff with you, otherwise you compromise your recovery. So you want to have chocolate milk, which is an ideal 4-to-1 carbohydrate protein ratio. A Cliff Builder's bar is about a 3.8-to-1 ratio. No, I don't work for them, I just know. Or you just have some nuts and fruit available. Or you have a banana with about a tablespoon of peanut butter smeared on it. That's about a 3.1 ratio of protein to carbohydrate. And that's what you need. It's, again, ideally within the first 30 minutes. and you want a 3 to 4 to 1 carbohydrate to protein ratio. This is when you want to get some protein into the meal, because now after you've worked out, this is when you've damaged some skeletal muscle tissue, and this is when you want to provide some protein to repair that. So you want to get that in for the recovery meal after you've worked out. And just, I would tell people in general, especially the new ones, especially the ones that haven't been doing this for a while, and for you all as well, just think about what you eat. Think about what you consume. And I don't care how clean your diet is or how healthy you think you eat. I tell everyone, take a multivitamin every day. It's a really, really cheap insurance policy. It's very inexpensive, and again, I don't care how clean your diet is, you're probably missing some vitamins, some minerals every day. Having a multivitamin can help bridge that gap. You really are what you eat. Your mom used to say that, and it's really true, everyone. What you eat literally becomes you. That's what your kidneys are made out of. That's what your skin is made out of. Your muscles, your hair, your everything, you literally become what you eat. So your muscles, your bones, your organs, really your entire being is composed of what you eat. So I always say to my undergraduate students, do you want to be a Twinkie or do you want to be a piece of broccoli? I mean, think about what you put into your mouth, because it makes a difference in your health, in your fitness, and how you perform when you run. There's no question about it, okay? And I think, again, we spend a lot of time talking about training, tempo, hills, speed, core, yoga. I mean, we got everything going on now. Training. And how many people think about the other side of the fence? What you put in your mouth. It makes there's a direct connection, everyone, between food and performance, and we tend to not think anywhere near enough about it. And it's not just us, trust me, it's Division I college athletes pay very little attention to what they eat. And a lot of times even professional athletes pay very little attention to what they eat. So hydration for performance. So this is the other thing that I like to talk a lot about, and it's something that's very important. So ideal fluid volume intake before competition is around 12 to 20 ounces of fluid. And everyone, I know I always give these sort of ounce recommendations. You don't have to be that prescriptive about it. I mean, I think you tell the people in your pace groups, before we meet on Saturday, make sure before you get to the school, to Worthington or here, if we're going to leave from here, have a glass and a half of water. Your 12, 13, 14 ounces. I mean, as long as they're in that range, get hydrated. That's an important thing to do. The other thing, you want to make sure that you're hydrating throughout the week. We know from a lot of research that most people walk around about 2% dehydrated all the time. During competition or during your training runs, you want to try to hit 5 to 7 ounces every 15 to 20 minutes. For most people, this is a mouthful of water or a mouthful of Gatorade every half mile or so. Now, I know during a race, you have an aid station every mile, and if you're getting a good mouthful, you're probably going to be almost hitting this. On Saturday, I know the aid stations are obviously not set up every mile. They're at certain points along the trail. Just make sure that people are stopping at those stations where they're set up and getting a good cup of water in, or Gatorade, or probably not water, Gatorade. Just make sure that they're doing that. What I tell people to do as well is if you're carrying your little bullets, you've got your fuel belt on or something, and you're carrying your hydration, and you still tend to forget, just set your watch to beep every 5 to 7 minutes, and it will remind you to drink. Or if you're running and listening to an iPod, what I tell people to do, every time there's a new song, take a drink of water. Every time the song changes, just make sure you're getting some water into your mouth or a Gatorade into your mouth, and that's going to get you the volume that you probably need. So the main reason you need to be having people drink, and this is something I want to make sure everybody has at least a pretty decent understanding, is because a lot of people will question, well, I don't need to drink that much. What's the point of me drinking that much? And this is the main reason you want to do it is replacing fluid helps to maintain your plasma volume. We know, everyone, about 94% of the sweat that comes out of you, about 94% of your sweat comes directly from your plasma. So your blood has 3 parts to it. Your blood has the plasma, which is the fluid. Then it has red blood cells and white blood cells and some other proteins, but those aren't important for right now. So when you're sweating, you're not flicking red blood cells off you. I mean, what's coming out of you is a fluid. And in about 94% of that fluid, your sweat is coming out of every pore. 94% of that is coming directly from your plasma. So as you go along in your activity, your blood is literally becoming thicker. The same number of red and white cells are there, but the amount of fluid is going down. So the blood is becoming thicker. And so your heart has to respond to that. Your heart is pumping a thicker fluid versus a thinner fluid. Think pumping molasses versus water. Now, it's not that kind of an extreme, but I'm just trying to give you an analogy. Your heart is pumping a thicker fluid, and the way that it adapts to that is by raising its rate, beats per minute. So again, everyone, this is sort of another way to think about it. If you're running inside on a treadmill, and it's warm in your gym, and you forgot your water bottle, and you're going to do an hour run on the treadmill. God bless you. So you're going to do an hour run on the treadmill, and you forget your water bottle. So you're running along, you know, you're 15 minutes into it. You look down at your heart rate monitor, because I know you're all wearing a heart rate monitor, right? Okay, good. So you look down at your heart rate monitor, and you're going at 150 beats a minute. Life is good. You're just cruising along. Okay, so now you're going at 7 miles per hour on a 1% grade, or whatever it is. 6.5 miles an hour, 0% grade, whatever. You're 45 minutes in, speed's the same, grade's the same, you look down at your heart rate monitor, and now you're at 165 beats a minute. Now you're not working any harder, grade is the same, speed is the same, but your heart rate's went up 15 beats a minute. That's what cardiac drift is. It's a drift up in your heart rate with no increase in workload, and the reason that's happening is because you're becoming dehydrated. You're losing a lot of plasma volume, and you're not putting any back in. That's the reason to hydrate yourself. And yes, you need to do that even in the winter, because I just sent something to Jeff, and I know he posted it about drinking in the winter, and you get your throat gets dehydrated, so you're losing more fluid volume in the winter than you might realize. As much as in the summer, of course not. Enough to be physiologically significant even in the winter? Absolutely. So avoiding dehydration, I think the best way to do this is by monitoring your hydration status by changing your body weight. And everyone, again, this is something, you don't have to be a scientist to do this, right? The best way to do this is you weigh yourself naked, you do your workout, take off your clothes, weigh yourself naked again. What's your difference in weight? That's how much you've lost from sweating. And it can be significant. If it's in the summer and you're a bigger person and or a heavy sweater, I'm a very heavy sweater, you will lose, I can lose as much as 4 or 5 pounds in an hour if I'm running inside on a treadmill. It's a lot of weight. And if you're not putting any fluid back in, your performance will suffer. It's that simple. And again, we think training. Think about the other side of the fence. Think about what you're putting into your body. So 1 hour of moderate exercise, it's easy to lose a half to a full liter of sweat. That's 2.2 pounds on a scale. It's a lot of weight. So, and that'll cause your heart rate to increase by 4 beats a minute. And again, you think, 4 beats a minute, what's the big deal? Well, 4 beats a minute is a lot when you're at the end of the race, there's a mile left, and now you want to kick it in, but you don't have any more ceiling left because you've been cardiac drifting for the last 5 or 6 miles. This is why it becomes very important. So the other way to monitor this is the color of your urine. I mean, and just tell people to tune into that. I mean, again, just look down when you're urinating. It should be really light yellow or almost a clear color. Not your first void of the day. It's obviously going to be darker then, but later in the day, lighter yellow, cheap lemonade, or almost clear. Because if it's this time of day and you urinate and your urine's dark yellow, what are you doing? You're badly dehydrated. You need to make sure you're drinking enough fluid throughout the day. Gatorade. And this goes to your question. Don't ever skip the aid stations in a race. And if you're exercising for longer than 60 minutes, which almost every Saturday run is, if you're exercising for longer than 60 minutes, you need to choose Gatorade or other like beverage. What I mean by that is Powerade, Gatorade Plus. You need a carbohydrate electrolyte beverage. That's what Gatorade is. It provides the carbohydrate for energy that we've talked about, and then you have the fluid and electrolytes that help prevent cramping. Because I know this is another question a lot of people have. I cramped late in the race. I mean, Dr. Bright could tell you, he's probably heard that 1,000 times. I cramped late in a race. What did I do wrong? And he starts to query them a bit. Oh, I didn't drink anything from mile 16 on. Well, what are you thinking? You're not thinking. You need to be hydrating. You need to be getting that fluid and electrolytes in. Otherwise, and will this guarantee that you don't cramp? No. Will it go a long way towards preventing it? Absolutely it will. Okay? Exception is when you have a gel. If you're having a gel, chase that with water, because all a gel is really dehydrated Gatorade. If you suck all the fluid out of Gatorade, well, almost all the fluid, it becomes a gel. If you suck all the fluid out of a gel, you know what we call that? A sport bean. I'm serious, right? If you completely dehydrate gel, then it's called a sport bean. If you hydrate it back a little bit, then it's gel. If you really hydrate it a lot, then it's called Gatorade. That's what you're getting. So if you're having a gel, chase that with water. Don't chase that with Gatorade, okay? Next is VO2 Max test and maximum heart rate. So, you know, we do, Dr. Bright and I, and we work with Carrie Hammer and Sean at Max Sports, we do these VO2 Max tests, and it's a way to determine your true maximum heart rate. And we do these things in a clinical setting, like I said, at Max Sports. And it's performed on either a treadmill, or we can hook your own bike if you're a triathlete up to a CompuTrainer to do it. And we take you to your maximum effort. It's only about 10 to 12 minutes long, but it gets pretty ouchy at the end, as I like to say. The best thing about this is it permits a really precise, individualized prescription of your heart rate training zones. And like I said, I do these at Max Sports Center, and then I walk through the whole thing with people, and you get a really individualized plan. And we've tested a lot of people that are in the MIT group this way. And I mean, if any of you know folks that I've tested at Max, I mean, I think ask them what their experience has been like. I think hopefully most of them would tell you it's been positive and that they really like the results. So I know you guys probably get questions about maximum heart rate and things like that, so I wanted to talk a little about that. Maximum heart rate is determined by only two things, your parents and how old you are. So if you picked your parents really well, and depending on what age you are, your maximum heart rate's influenced by that. It's not influenced by anything else. Your fitness level has no influence on your maximum heart rate. And what I think the best way to explain that is there's the most aerobically fit, lean, mean version of you possible. Then you have a clone that's 70 pounds overweight, smokes, drinks, eats Twinkies. Both of you have the exact same maximum heart rate. You can't train your max heart rate. It doesn't go up with your fitness and down with your fitness. The difference is the one of you that's really fit, when you're closer to your maximum heart rate, you can cruise along, you're fine. The other person, you get them 80% of their max heart rate, they need a vomit bag. That's the difference. That's a mark of aerobic fitness. So you can't train maximum heart rate. Only your genetics and your age have an influence on it. It can be predicted by 220 minus age. That's a common prediction equation. So here's two estimate methods you can tell people to use for max heart rate. One of them is a straight estimate. One of them is just something that's called a Carbohydrate formula, and I just want to walk you guys through two examples of this. A straight estimate is just 220 minus age, and then you take your desired percentage of that number. The Carbohydrate formula is a little more complex. You need to know your resting heart rate, which I'll talk about. Then you add that to the percent that you choose. I want to run at 70% today of max effort. Then your maximum minus your resting. The straight estimate is pretty darn conservative. The Carbohydrate formula is much more aggressive, and I'll give you two examples of that in a moment. The straight estimate is honestly good for less fit beginners, older adults, or for pregnant women that weren't running before. If all of a sudden you get pregnant, you decide, no, I'm going to start to take care of myself, that's a good thing to do, but you don't want to start going out there hammering if you've just gotten pregnant and you've never hammered before. So less fit beginners, older adults, pregnant women, it's good to use that for. If you're fitter, if you're more experienced, if you've been running for a while and you don't know what your true max heart rate is, I would use the Carbohydrate formula. Let me show you why right here. An example, so 70%, let's say that you're 20 years old. Wouldn't we all love that? Well, I wouldn't. I wouldn't go back to being 20. So 220 minus age, so your max heart rate is estimated at 200. You take 70% of that, that's 140 beats a minute, okay? Use the Carbohydrate formula. So let's say that your resting heart rate is 60 beats a minute. There's your 70%. 200 minus the 60, 158. So you guys, they're both 70%, and there's an 18 beat difference between the straight estimate and Carbohydrate. 18 beats a minute is a huge difference in cardiac output, blood flow from your heart. So you can see that one is very conservative, one is much more aggressive. I think for most of the people in MIT, the Carbohydrate formula is fine. If you've got someone who's truly a beginner and who's never run before, you might want to start them here. Honestly, in my opinion, this is probably for folks that are in the No Boundaries program, that are really never done much physical activity at all, and they're trying to just make a 5K for the first time. That's probably when that's best used. I think for most of us and people that you're working with in MIT, even the 12-minute milers, 13-minute milers, I think the Carbohydrate formula is probably a little better. So heart rate guided training. So You guys, these are the heart rate training zones. I know you have these in your bullet points as well as the slides, and these are things I think that people will talk to you about as well. So there's 5 of these. Zone 1 is what we call active recovery, or just very easy aerobic activity. Zone 2, this is your long, slow distance run. This is the Saturday run with the group. Zone 2 is where people should be. This is your Saturday run with the group. Zone 3 is a tempo run, which is what I like to call a comfortably hard effort. And your anaerobic threshold, which maybe some of you have heard about, your anaerobic threshold tends to be at the very top end of Zone 3. And what I mean by comfortably hard or a tempo run is, what I tell people that I talk to is, let's say that you're going to do a tempo run today and your partner's going to go along with you and ride a bike just to keep you company. So it doesn't matter how hard you're running. If they're riding a bike, it's not going to be hard for them. So they're riding right along next to you, chatting away just to keep you company. If you can sort of talk back to them in 2 or 3 word sentences, yeah, I saw that. We can go there. I like that movie. Okay, I mean, like if you can sort of communicate like that back to them, you're right where I want you. If you can carry on a full conversation, you're not doing a tempo run. If you feel like you're getting pulled by your tongue, you're not doing a tempo run. So comfortably hard. Sort of, you know you're pushing, it's a really good run, but there's some ceiling left. But you know, you're not down here in Zone 1 or Zone 2. That's a tempo run, comfortably hard. Okay? Zone 4 is an interval workout, so this is the Wednesday night thing, it's the track or hill workouts. In Zone 4, you're starting to introduce an anaerobic intensity. And in Zone 5, this is the highest interval intensity. This is highly anaerobic. This is for people that are experienced, because if you're not experienced, this is when you're going to get a fast ticket to go see Dr. Bright. And I don't mean for a max test. I mean because now you're hurt because you did too many intervals in Zone 5. And that's not what we want to have happen to people. Again, finish, enjoy it. Okay? Finish, enjoy it. So we know that most amateur endurance athletes spend nearly all their time training in upper Zone 3, even flirting into Zone 4. Most people work way too hard. And I think if there's one mantra we've tried to get into MIT, it's slow down, slow down, slow down. You need to maybe adjust your pace group back, let go of your ego. Just run, enjoy it, slow down, slow down. If it's good enough for the Kenyans, if it's good enough for Ryan Hall, it's certainly good enough for us. That's just my opinion. So, but what do I know? So, and this is what I like to call training never land, because it's really not hard enough to become super race fit, but it's nowhere near easy enough to allow your body to recover and get rid of fatigue. And if you're always training up in this zone, and then you go to the track and try to do an interval workout, might you be able to mentally bang through it and get your intervals done and gut it out? Yes, you might, particularly if you're experienced. But A, you're at a much greater risk for injury, and B, you're not going to get everything out of that interval workout that you should if you were well rested going into it. And that's the point of an interval workout. So consequences include less effective interval training, which is not what you want, and an increased risk of overuse injuries, which we know a lot of endurance athletes get. Professional endurance athletes, or training sessions are heart rate guided. You guys, in my career, I've had the great good fortune to work with a lot of professional endurance athletes, runners and triathletes, names that you would recognize, people that have been in the Olympic trials recently, and I've tested them when I spent some years in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center, and I can tell you that all of those athletes, their training is heart rate based. They are obsessed with what their heart rates are in the morning when they get up from their afternoon naps, because yes, they nap every day, because remember, they do this for a paycheck, so that's their job. So yes, they nap. When they get up, what's my heart rate? What's my heart rate? You know, Alberto, what's my heart rate? They're always asking their coaches what their heart rates are when they're running, and they really prescribe to this. So consider committing to this. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying start to get it into your head, think about it, begin to let go a little of that pace per mile training. And I know that's hard because the very nature of this is set up pace groups. But I just want to get everyone to at least start thinking about this, and hopefully someday in the yonder future we'll be able to figure out a way to have everyone do it. So one thing I do want all of you to do, and coaches, I think this should be, as far as I'm concerned, mandatory. What is your true resting heart rate? You should all know what your true resting heart rate is. So take it in the morning before you rise from bed. And I don't mean after you've gotten up and gone to the bathroom. I don't mean after you've gotten up and I mean when you first awake and you're still lying horizontally, take the resting heart rate. Take it for 30 seconds, multiply it by 2, note it down, and take 4 or 5 of those days, then average it, and that will give you a very good idea of what your true resting heart rate is. And the reason to know it is for this reason. If you know your resting heart rate is 50, and you wake up one morning and take it, and it's 57. Now remember, all you've done is this to get your rest. You haven't gotten up out of bed yet, and your heart's already 7 beats faster per minute than it should be. You're fatigued. And if it's Wednesday and Jeff's supposed to be pounding you on the track that night, I wouldn't go do it because you're fatigued and you haven't done anything yet. So you're not going to get everything out of the interval workout that you could. I promise you, the track is still there on Thursdays. I've checked. Okay? It'll still be there on Thursdays. Do the interval workout that day. Tempo runs and hill workouts last thing. So a tempo workout, again, the intensity, how you do these, about 80 to 85% of your max heart rate. It's near a 10K race pace. Again, it's that comfortably hard thing, everyone. The duration for these is roughly 30 to 90 minutes. The distance isn't important. What's important in a tempo workout is how many minutes I'm doing it. This should be days per week, no more than 1 to 2. I think if you're really experienced, you want to do maybe 2 tempo workouts a week. If you're just getting started, it's your first half or full marathon, you might not want to do any of them. You might just get your mileage in, get to the finish line. Why do you do these? You accustom your body to a race pace effort. Your body learns a little bit more economy. You start to run a little faster at a prolonged period of time, which is a good thing. And you gradually become faster because you're running near that anaerobic threshold. Remember, in zone 3, and eventually you're going to increase that upper limit, and that's what makes you faster. So the last thing is hill workouts. And Jeff sent around a good email today with some stick figures, which is great to kind of show how you run up a hill. So hill workouts make you stronger. Hill workouts are what I like to call sport-specific resistance training. And what I mean by that is by running up a hill, you're adding resistance. I mean, it's harder to run up a hill than it is on a flat. That's because the hill equals resistance, like weight on the bar. The hill is resistance. And so when you're running up the hill, you're using your running muscles. So it's a sport-specific resistance training. So you're utilizing those muscles that you use when you run, you're training them. These can be woven into interval days. Jeff could design an interval workout that instead of running halves on the track, we're going to find a hill that's a quarter mile long, and we're going to do hill repeats. I mean, you can weave these into an interval day. The only thing I would say is after an interval workout or after a hill workout, your next day is zone 1. Your next day is zone 1.